welcome to FreeThinkers Fireside. Where we put the human and humanist one cozy chat at a time. My name is Helen, also known as Hell's Bells. I am very excited tonight to introduce A.T. Coffey, who is a former Southern Baptist preacher that is going to tell us about his deconversion stories, and we'll probably talk about some other topics as well. So let's say hi to A.T. Hello. Welcome to the show.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the channel. I really appreciate it. We have not talked since the RFR excursion.
So. No, we haven't, and because that's where I first met you. I kid people, and I call it atheist camp.
Atheist camp. Yes, it is very much atheist camp.
I'd never been around so many atheists at one time. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, we are an eclectic bunch of weirdos and non-believers, and it's fantastic. So, hi John, I see you, honey. For the audience, say hi, who you are, and what you do, and things.
Okay. Hi, my name is A.T. Coffey. I was a Southern Baptist minister for 32 years. I'm retired now, and I spend a lot of time doing political stuff. I'm a pretty far left-wing Democrat, so if y'all don't like Democrats, I'm in trouble. Right now I spend most of my time trying to keep my house from falling down. But I'm like I said, I'm retired, and I've been retired since 2023, but after I lost my job as a pastor, I never could find a decent job after that. So I've been kind of unemployed and resource short since then. But I've been married my wife and I had just been married for 40 years.
Congratulations!
Thank you. And we celebrated that, and. Part of the celebration is this couch back here in the back. I got that at Goodwill for $31.
Nice. I love a bargain. I love a bargain. I'm a cheap ass bitch. I love a bargain.
Hey, that doesn't make you cheap. That makes you wise and frugal.
It does, but also makes me a cheap ass. And I'll take that and a bitch. It makes me both. I can be both.
There you go. You can be both. You can be all that you can be, and don't even have to join the Army.
That's right. I learned that in the Army. I learned that from watching Army commercials back in the 1990s.
I live in far South Texas, where I'm in the middle of red world. Our county, Victoria County, went 70+% for Donald Trump in the last election, and we haven't had a Democrat represent any in the House or in the Senate or in our legislature for 20 years at least, 30 maybe.
That's we were talking about that before we went live, about like how like Florida and Oklahoma and Texas are just having this awful dick whacking contest, and I'm constantly amazed of like, how can we out shit each other, you know? And I'm like, oh guys, like, like, you need a stiff drink and a lay, and you need to do some self-reflecting. That's what you all need. Like, you need to grow.
Need to lose touch with your inner Jesus freak, which is really just a cover for being an Old Testament loving person, and get in touch with some humanistic values.
Yeah, it would be nice. Here I keep like I always I have this attitude about myself right now, is that like I just like a lot of people, but I also have like a tiny bit of like a fool's hope of compassion that maybe, people will grow, mature, become, and change, and all that type of stuff. I know it's a fool's hope. I know. Okay. But I still, there's a little part of me, I'm just, because like, I don't want people to be assholes. And I'm like, it's better. And it's actually better for you and for everybody else if you're not.
Well, if nothing else, take me as a case for hope, because I was a fundamentalist. Hardcore Calvinist.
All right, so yeah, like, so let's talk about your background, man.
Okay. Yeah. See, I'm a glimmer of hope that you can be like that and change.
So have you always lived in Texas?
I'm sorry.
Have you always lived in Texas?
I've lived in Texas for 54 out of the last 64 years.
Okay.
I take it back. That's actually I only lived in Oklahoma for 5 years, so it really wasn't. It was 64 minus 5. That's what, 59. Because I lived in Fort Worth when I went to the seminary.
Okay. And then you just kind of stayed.
Well, I grew up. In fact, the house I'm in right now is the house I grew up in.
Okay.
And I took care of my parents and stuff when they got down and all that, and I ended up with the house as part of the inheritance, as it were. But I lived in Fort Worth for 4.5 years while I went to Southern Baptist Seminary, Southwestern Seminary in Fort Worth, and then I lived in Oklahoma for 5.5 years where I pastored my first church.
Oh wow.
And there's a reason the Red River's there.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So.
Yeah, there's a reason for the Red River being there. They keep Texas out of there. We're not. They don't think very highly of us.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So it's like a border.
Yeah, it's like it is a border, but there's a reason the Red River's there. They don't like us.
That seems reasonable. Were you raised Southern Baptist evangelical?
Kinda.
Okay.
My parents when I was born, they were Catholic. And see, this was in 1960.
Those are my people.
Yeah, I got baptized and all that good stuff, and I can remember going to mass one time when I was about 4 or 5 years old. But my parents got all upset with the Vatican II stuff, because my mother, she was born in 1923. She was old school Catholic. She went to, she grew up in it. My dad converted to it in the 1940s before he got drafted into the Army. And so they met up in, originally in Mission, Texas, which is in the valley. And then later on, they ended up getting married at Scottsfield, Illinois.
Oh, wow.
Wave too. I don't know who you're waving at, but
I'm just waving at my chat.
Okay.
And then when people start scrolling, then I start screaming their names. So like a fucking 13-year-old girl, and it brings me so much joy. So anyway, keep going.
So anyhow, they got married, and then my dad, he was from here. In fact, this property all has been in some version of my family for like 100 since the 1880s.
Oh wow, that's cool. That's really cool.
I only have about 3 acres of it now. All the rest of it.
You live on more acres than I do. I live on like a quarter. So.
And so anyhow, they got married, and they were like super. They weren't real super devout Catholics, from what I gather from the stories of drinking and partying and gambling and all that stuff. Because my dad worked in the oil field. He followed them around. Followed the oil field, and then started working offshore in the late 1950s. After he spent several years in Venezuela when they first started drilling for oil in Venezuela.
Okay.
But when I was born, I was a Catholic. That's a long way to get around to that. And here I'm info dumping. Sorry about that.
That's fine. I'm asking you for your background. That's what I wanted. So that's why you're here, man. I want to hear your story.
And so in 1967, 68. After both my parents got sick and tired of, they were all upset about the Vatican II stuff. And so we started going to this Lutheran church over here in Mission Valley, which is technically the area I live in Victoria County. And while we were there, my dad got hooked up with one of his old buddies who got saved.
Oh, of course.
And, and this guy was on fire for Jesus.
Fire for
And
Jesus.
got my dad saved, and so that hit my dad's project from then on was getting me saved, getting my mom saved, my little brother saved, and me saved.
How many
And
times have you been
so
saved?
I've been saved at least, let's see, Catholic, Baptist, Church of Christ, back to Baptist. So I guess that's about 4 or 5 times.
4 times.
Yeah. I've been baptized 4 times because when I came back to the,
I've only done it once. So,
but you got it poured on you when you were a little kid, right?
Yeah, I was 3 months old. And like I still have my baptism certificate and my candle. And
I
from
still have my
when I was baptized as a baby. Yeah. And I have my kids with still too. So I kept all that stuff.
And then let's see, after that, he got saved, and then finally my mother and I, we kept going to the Lutheran church. But my brother and he, because my brother was his favorite, my younger brother was his favorite, they were going to the Baptist church. And finally he got me by myself one day in the car going to, I forget, I don't even know where we were going. He leaned over to me, he said, now son, Jesus is going to come back one of these days. And if you don't get saved and have him as your Lord and Savior, if he came back right now, I would be taken out of this car and you'd be left. And then you'd die and go to hell.
Okay.
Yeah. So that night I had a dream that down here at the foot of the hill that this house sits on was a grave marker that said, and there was fire coming up around it and all this. And this grave marker said, Alan T. Coffey died and went to hell.
Nice. How old are you?
And so my mother and I ended up, I guess she decided to get saved when she saw me go get saved. I don't know what her thought process was. And we got saved and got baptized in July of 1970. I was 9 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And,
wow.
We were at that church for a while, and then they decided to start a Baptist church out here near where I live now, called Rocky Creek. And so my parents and my brother and I, we were all charter members of this church. We started off meeting in this guy's house that wasn't really where they wanted to put the church at, but eventually they cleared the land off and they put a house trailer on there that they had gutted and bought the smallest air conditioner unit you could buy that's still, central heat and air. And they'd fire that air conditioner up like the day before to get that building cool on the inside. It took about 15 minutes and it was too hot to handle. That's how cheesy the air conditioner was. But yeah, they ended up building, they've got a fairly large church complex out there, basically in the middle of nowhere, about 6 miles from here, I guess. So anyhow, then my dad decided that for some reason he didn't like the preacher anymore, and he quit taking us to church in 1975, which was when I was in the 8th grade.
Okay.
So we didn't do any church stuff until when I got in college. That's when I started going back to church. I just kind of didn't, we just, didn't go to church.
Usually it's the opposite. Usually you grew up going to church and then you go away to college and then you discover like drinking and members and you start, feeling like maybe I can't have sex.
Well, as far as the drinking goes, when I was in high school, you could drink when you were 18 in Texas.
Oh, okay.
At that time, that didn't last long, but I turned 18, November of 1978. So I was 18 for, good half of my senior year. And I always had these little kids say, hey, you want to buy me some booze? Well, I didn't have any money, so I wasn't going to buy them any booze. I'll give you the money. It's like, no, I really don't want to have a close encounter with the Texas Alcohol and Tobacco Commission.
Yeah, that's not a good time.
Yeah, that's not a good time for anybody.
No.
So I started college, and I went. I worked my way through college. You could do that back in the old days because the tuition wasn't so expensive.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you know, unless you're a high rolling CEO, you cannot make enough money to pay for your college. But I paid
No,
for all my college.
I'm still like, I'm thousands and thousands of dollars in debt. And I took psychology, and I'm like, here, I'm a very good hoop jumper. I did a good job. Am I using my psych degree? No. Like,
Well, I have a master's degree in Christian mythology and Bible study.
so, okay. Here's a question. This is something I'm kind of curious about, because me and my best friend were having a conversation last night where he took when he was in college, took a history of Christianity class.
Mm-hmm.
And the professor tore this like particular student apart, because they were like, he was basically like pointing out, like, where Christianity came from, and it was really politics and influence that made it popular, not because people all of a sudden became believers, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like going through like facts. And she goes, how do you know this? And he's like, because I have a doctorate in religion. but my thing is that, though, he was coming in from a very like analytical sort of perspective. Mm-hmm. And I know there's people that are believers, but they can still like be very analytical and know the history, I wonder, is there a way that you're taught biblical history if you're in like a Christian college versus like a secular one?
Is there a difference in the way you teach it?
Yeah, like, is there a different, like, I don't know, because like I don't know. I think I'm trying to make it make sense. Like,
well, when I was in college, my major was history, and I still enjoy just my autistic special interest is history and archaeology, mm-hmm. and all that kind of stuff. And I know when I got into seminary, they approached history from a very different perspective, because I had to take something called church history, and mm-hmm. then I had to take another class called Baptist history, and I took some electives. And it seemed to me that, particularly since I deconverted and because I deconverted in 2010, and I got outed from the pulpit in 2016. But in that time from 2010 until the present, I've read Christian history and such from a much more secular analytical perspective, because mm-hmm. even when I was a pastor, I would have people. I had this one person tell me, said, "You're like a Christian Spock." The way I approach things.
Ooh. A Christian Spock.
Christian Spock, yeah. It's like, okay. I think that was just my autism that I didn't know I had back then. But
right.
But looking at it, analytically now, that there's a lot of devotional stuff that gets mixed into what Christian colleges and seminaries teach about history. It's not nearly as facts and objectivity oriented, if that makes sense.
No, that does. It does make sense.
So I would think in a secular setting they would probably teach it more with more analytical values, more critical values, like what are your sources? What's the data say? Is this a reliable source? Because there's a lot of Christian history, particularly if you start getting into like ancient churches history, like Orthodox, Catholic, Coptic, and there's a variety of ancient churches that are still floating around out there in the Middle East, around the Mediterranean, that are not part of either the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church. Mm-hmm. And you start getting into those, a lot of their history is approached from the perspective of traditions and what these old manuscripts are about and all this kind of stuff. And they're not really interested in objective data. And they were in seminary. They weren't either. They were pitching a particular version of Christianity that fit the Southern Baptist tradition. Like I remember when we talked about the early church fathers, who I have subsequently read a lot of. And this professor, who at the time I had a lot of respect for, he just comes around and says, we're reading like Irenaeus's letters and some of these guys, and he says, they're strong on the moral part, but they're pretty weak on being saved by faith. They just really didn't get that like Paul taught. And I'm thinking, I remember the first thought in my head, and this must have been like some little nascent spark that was floating around that stayed in the back of my brain. I thought to myself, what do you mean? I mean, this is what the guy's saying, and this is like in 90 AD. This is only like 60 years after, Jesus had been around, and the apostles. And you're saying, oh well, they're pretty weak on what the Bible really says. And I'm like, okay.
But isn't it in the book?
Well, yeah, but not that's. But he didn't talk anything about faith alone, sola scriptura, sola fides.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, whatever, bro, whatever. And I did kind of stowed that. I didn't think about it much after that. I don't know why, but that came back to haunt me. So yeah, Christianity, like Tom here said earlier, it's not objective, and they're not going to waste a lot of time on trying to teach it objectively.
No. Well, like I just find it interesting the way, because it's the same history, but it's the approach that I find fascinating. Like, because like when I was pagan, one thing about being a pagan is that we love religion, and and mythology is fascinating because you're like, you do kind of follow the history of religion, and so there was a lot of stuff that I knew before I kind of let go of belief at all. But even still, like when I was Catholic and a pagan, like I couldn't get behind a god or gods. Like I could get I could get behind like a universal consciousness and some Jungian weird shit. That seemed a little psychological more than like external. So it was a little bit easier for me to conceptualize. But I will say, when if you're taught it literally, it's a totally different. And I think that's where I have a hard time, even with my deconstruction and leaving religion, that I can't get to someone that like believed this was like real, like physically real. And I'm just like, okay, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, it's just very interesting. Like the way that when you look at things from a more objective sort of perspective, and you just kind of take a step outside of yourself, you're just like, well, I'm like, do I have any real justification to believe any of this? So,
you know what? I step back and look at what I used to believe and the things I used to say from the pulpit and stuff like that. I just cannot believe. Well, I take it back. I'm horrified at some of the things I have said, like the bashing the LGBTQIA plus people, bashing women for what the preach and stuff. But it's the version of Christianity I was in just didn't have anything that was good or positive or helpful for real people. It was for people who wanted to remove themselves from the real world and plant themselves in this little bubble and say, okay, you're in here and everything outside of here is the enemy. It's bad, it's wicked, it's evil, and you've got to be on guard against it. And
what am I being on guard against?
Yeah, like you got to be against all this stuff. And I nearly got run off because I dared to imply that Jesus didn't have a problem with people drinking alcohol.
No, he was about the party, man. Like he was
Yeah, I mean,
like this party's got to get lit. I got to make some water and wine.
and I'm gonna light it up, man, right
Yeah.
now. Boom.
Boom.
But yeah, that was troubling, because looking back at it, I can remember I in my personal thoughts and my personal inner life, there were a lot of things that really bothered me about Christianity and the things I had to do as a pastor and the things I was supposed to teach and say and all this sort of stuff that I just, I was not real comfortable with, but it was expected. And so, I towed the line. But
So,
I'm sorry.
I have a follow-up question to that. So, take me back a little bit. Like, what inspired you to become a pastor?
When I was 5 years old.
Wow, everybody makes really good decisions when they're 5. So.
Yeah, I know. When I was 5 years old, for some reason or another, I became convinced that I was supposed to be some kind of minister. Now, at that time, we really weren't going to the Catholic Church. We hadn't started going to the Lutheran Church. I had no idea what kind of minister that would be. But I would even dress up some of my stuffed animals, like a preacher or a priest. And that kind of was percolating in the back of my head for a long time. And then when I started going to church again in college, under this one particular preacher that I had been, sitting under, listening to, and enjoying his ministry, if you will. I had this guilt-ridden conviction that I was supposed to be a pastor.
Of course.
And so I surrendered to the ministry. Well, then I got scared and I ran away from that. And I went and hung around with the Catholics for a while over at the Catholic Student Union. And then got a hold of me again after I met my wife, whose father was a Baptist minister. And so I ended up under all that influence. Well, actually, before I knew before I met my wife, but about that same time, all these confluence of things came together, and I surrendered to the ministry again. And this time, I followed through with it. This is in 1983. Yeah, 1983. And I became a minister in 1984 in October when I was licensed to the gospel ministry.
Okay.
This is before I'd gone to seminary or anything like that. And I had to preach in front of the church, and I preached a 5-minute sermon 3 times, basically because I thought I had more there to say than what I actually had. And they gave me a license. And so then I started doing what they call supply work in the Southern Baptist world, where you go around to churches that either don't have a pastor for some reason, or the pastor is out of town or sick or something like that, and you preach for them. Some of them just have you come in the morning. Some of them have you morning and evening, and they pay you for that.
Okay.
And each church, pays you what they think you're worth. And some of them haven't changed what they paid preachers in, years. But you drive out like in the middle of nowhere. Right. Yeah. Christians are stingy.
Well,
they're very, very stingy. Well, that's a different story. I can get off on a
because you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart. Because Jesus will take care of you. Duh.
That's right.
Like, why would you want this worldly thing called money?
Yeah, if you start talking too much about money, then you're too worldly, brother. You're too worldly. Yeah. But so I did that for a while, and then my wife and we got married on May 25th, 1985, and it went immediately from Victoria, Texas to Fort Worth to go to the seminary. Now, you were talking about having fun. That's not how you want to spend your honeymoon. first year of being married is going to seminary.
Why?
Yeah, well, because I had to, I graduated from college with my history degree, and I had to get on the road and get busy for Jesus. And what's wild about all this, I'm pushing myself all the time. I worked myself through college, I worked myself through the seminary, and in fact, the last year I lived in Fort Worth, I was working a graveyard shift in a grocery store, full time. And
my
that's
dude.
exciting. In the big city, in the middle of the night, you got all sorts of interesting people coming in. And, crack dealers and crack manufacturers, because that was before meth got to be as big a thing. It was all crack. And so these people would come in and they would buy all the lye in the store and all the distilled water in the middle of the night. That you gotta have that to process the cocaine and whatever it is they mix. I guess they mix it with lye.
Yeah, so it becomes like a crack rock.
Yeah.
Which is cheaper to produce. And so I don't know why I know drug culture shit, but here we are.
I know a lot of things. I don't know why.
I've never done crack or cocaine. I'm not ashamed about the fact that I've taken drugs in the past, but I haven't done that drug because, as somebody pointed out, Helen, you're hyperactive enough. You do not need that. I was like, fair. So,
yeah, my attitude about people and drugs has changed a lot since I'm not a Christian anymore. But back then,
I'm like, listen, I'm from the opinion that anything can be addictive, anything. And we do know that some substances are more addictive than others, but at the end of the day, this is not a moral failing. You're just a person that became chemically dependent on something. Well, let me help you.
Yeah, because of trauma or whatever,
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different things that affect the brain. So if people are judging you for that, fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck them. They're bad. They're not good people.
Because I am gonna rant now.
Okay, you can rant. Go ahead. Welcome to the show.
If we could get people to stop treating all the social problems in the United States as moral failings instead of what they really are, systemic failings, medical or health failing, that's not the person's fault. Like poverty, for instance, everybody assumes that poor people, they just deserve to be poor. If they were worth anything, they wouldn't be poor. And that's social Darwinism. And while I am a neo-Darwinist when it comes to evolution, I am not a Darwinist when it comes to social policy or how you treat other human beings. And the same thing with drug addiction and all. It is not a moral failing. It's a disease or a systemic problem that can be treated if you're willing to treat it like what it really is and not write it off as some Judeo-Christian moral failing. That's my little rant.
Correct me if I'm wrong, preacher. Wasn't Jesus against capitalism?
Yeah, he does.
So where's the logic in that? If there's ever a Christian that is watching this channel and believes in prosperity gospel, please explain this. I don't think it makes any sense, especially when your own damn book, Jesus was talking against capitalists.
Well, that's one of those mysteries, because I never did get on board the prosperity train. So right. I don't really have a lot to say about it other than it's wrong, and that Jesus was helping poor people and healing the sick and feeding the hungry without waiting for some kind of recompense from, in terms of dollars and cents. He goes into the temple and he turns over the moneylender's table and runs off all the sheep because, hey guys, this is supposed to be a place for worship. It's not a place for you to make an extra buck off of these people who can't afford to bring their own animals.
Right.
So And
Which is
besides,
probably better because, like, really, God doesn't need a blood sacrifice. We're fine. Like,
yeah, no, we don't need that anymore. Just take a pass.
yeah, like what the goat do to you? Like,
Yeah, just leave the goats here. We'll take care of them, and we'll make them. We'll
yeah,
make them
like,
fat.
oh my god, if I could start a church where I could just have goats, and that is like my form of worship. You bring me like little goats for me to take care of. I will start that church. I will start the church of goats.
You could call it, the Church of Goats. You can
Come say
have
hi. Todd's here.
mini
Come
goats.
say hi. Come say hi to AT. Todd's here. Say hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, bro? Nice to see
okay.
you. Good deal. I'm A-okay for an old man.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. He came to refill my wine, so that's it. That's okay. That's it. That's fine.
I like how he materialized out of the background.
He does. It's magic. It's my magic.
Cool.
It's my magic green screen.
That's cool.
So I'm sorry. So like, I'm sorry. I want to go back because you were mentioning you went to college and you were like, and what was that process like when you went to college and you were like Christian and you were gonna like become a pastor afterwards? Like, what was that experience?
Well, this far south in South Texas, there are very few people who were not some version of Christian.
Okay.
You know, oddly enough, people tend to think of the Baptist and the Methodist being the biggest deal in this part of Texas, but it's actually the Catholics. This is all Catholic country from the coast all the way up to about 2/3 of the way to Fort Worth. Is mostly Catholic people. In fact, all the biggest churches in Victoria are Catholic. They don't stick out like a mega church does, although a couple of them look kind of mega churchy. But Victoria is the seat of a diocese, and so you got the cathedral and the chancellery building, and we got a bishop in residence and all that kind of stuff. But the Catholic folks were, with the exception of a few of them that I knew, they didn't really care what the Baptists did. There aren't that many of y'all. Go ahead and do whatever you want to.
Okay.
We have a lot.
I mean, to me, that sounds like the way I grew up. So,
we have a lot of Germans and Italians and some French folks and Hispanic folks, and very Mexicans mostly, and Mexican people who are descendants of the original settlers there, not white people. And but yeah, it's mostly Catholic country.
Okay.
And there's a lot of Baptists that really look down on Catholics.
Well, yeah, because the Catholics aren't the right religion. Okay.
Yeah, it's not the right religion.
They don't believe in Jesus the right way.
That's right. You're worshiping the devil because you believe the Pope has authority. He's the Antichrist.
I don't. And okay, explain this. Okay, this is okay. Then Then like, what the mental gymnastics that are you doing? Because if you have like, I'm just going to use an asshole for an example, Greg Locke, and people latch onto what Greg Locke says, and they think that, and I'm like, aren't you doing the exact same thing the Catholics are doing with the Pope? Like the filter of, how religion is communicated to you.
Well, Greg Locke, see, that's the guy. Is that the guy in Oklahoma? Or is that the president of the Southern Baptist?
Greg Locke is in Tennessee, I think.
Oh, okay. He's the wild-eyed preacher guy.
Yeah, he's one of these very loud, very annoying preachers that apparently SR told me that it is so loud where he preaches, because SR doesn't live far from him, that it projects enough that there's a noise ordinance.
Oh, wow.
That he's violating. And because he's doing it, because when he's preaching, they can't really complain about it, because then because he's Greg Locke and he's an asshole, starts complaining about like, this is religious persecution shit. So that guy. But and the concept of like, if you're getting your information about your faith from a third source, second or third, wouldn't that be exactly the same thing the Catholics are doing?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
It would be. The only difference is that the Catholics have a tradition reaching back literally over 1,000 years
Yes.
for their stuff. Whereas
Yes.
Greg Locke, who knows where he got that from, where he got whatever it was he was saying.
I don't know.
But and that's justified by is it in Second Timothy? I believe it talks about Paul is talking to Timothy. He says, basically hang on to your faith and remember those who taught it to you. And so there's a lot of leeway given to people that are seen as people of wisdom, elders who are full of wisdom and stuff like that.
Wisdom.
That you wouldn't give to a car salesman even if he was 65 years old, but because he's one of the people who has poured forth the faith and he must be trustworthy, which is one reason why some of these people get led down the primrose path, because you're encouraged in Christianity, particularly that passage written not really by Paul but some other guy who was claiming to be Paul, because it's a pseudo. What they call the pastoral epistles are all pseudepigrapha. They're not really written by the guys whose names are on the books. But anyhow, so yeah, you get hauled off down the pathway with them, and next thing you know, you're believing that Donald Trump was sent by God, and that America was a Christian nation and it was founded on Christian principles. When all you have to do is look at the name of the second house of the legislature to know that's bullshit. The Romans had a Senate. The Jews did not have a Senate.
No, they did not. No, they did not.
No, and the Jews didn't have a guy who could veto stuff, which was something a tribune did against legislation from the Senate or the sitting consul for that year. So it's like it defies the imagination.
Oh, my dude. Okay, so All Steel Gaming is saying, like, I just looked up Tennessee Greg Locke on YouTube, and this guy looks. He is a racist, terrible human being, but he is entertaining. So I'll give him that. He's kind of like a train wreck. Greg Locke's like a train wreck. It's kind of like the thing that you're kind of looking at, and you're fascinated because it's so horrible, but also kind of weird and funny. He's a fascinating human being, but also, like, he got mad at the Barbie movie. Like, this is the guy we're dealing with, okay, everybody? Like, I would say he needs Jesus, but he has too much Jesus.
Well, I think the real problem is, since Jesus doesn't exist, he's running on fumes. He's
running on fumes and hate, which sustains a lot of angry men, and women, and so there's that.
Yeah.
But he's just not a good person. He's not a good person.
It sounds like he's not.
He's not a good person. He's very racist. He's very sexist. He called his people in his own congregation like demons and witches, but he wouldn't call them out by name but he just saying, like, I know you're witches, and I can't do a Southern accent, and I will not do that to my audience because it's going to be terrible. But that was basically the shit that he said, and I'm over here going like, dude, like, he just randomly accusing, and this makes witches toxic, because if you believe in witches and things like that, then that means that the people in your congregation will start to suspect each other, and that's not healthy.
No, that's not healthy.
No.
Not healthy at all. But yeah, well, anyhow, back to so I pastored a church in Oklahoma for 5 years, and then I bailed out and came back to good old Texas, bunked with the parents for a while. Then I got a job at a radio station, and I did voice work and stuff for a while. But it was just a little cheesy, out in the middle of nowhere country station. And as soon as I got there, I managed to get their their three biggest accounts. And then when I left to go pastor this church that I pastored for almost 19 years before I got fired, it shut down not long after that, because the guy he hired just was not willing to put out the effort that I put out. Is what it boils down to. But here's an example of my radio voice. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. DeWitt County. I'm Alan Coffey, and this is KTXE News at 6 a.m.
Very good. Better than I could do.
Not Seth Andrews quality. And
well, Seth Andrews is just the bar that we all fall under and fail at. So,
that's the way I can be that smooth and that crisp.
No.
And that
he has a very. I told him that several times. I'm like, I love listening to you. I've been listening to you for years, and I love listening to you. And he also gives really good hugs. So,
okay. Yeah. See, I've never, because I'm out here in the middle of nowhere, and I'm isolated, and I'm resource poor. That when I went to the atheist camp, that's the first time I was ever around that many atheist people.
We're fun. We're fun in a group.
Oh yeah, I had a blast. I hated to leave. I didn't, but yeah, that's I'm just because of the circumstances of me losing my job in 2016 and not having a real job, basically from there until COVID came. I'm resource poor, so I don't do a lot, because every tank of gas, because I live like 10 miles outside of town, and so every time I go into town, that's gasoline I have to spend, and car maintenance, and all that.
And you only, if you have only so many resources, you gotta budget.
Yeah,
and with the price of gas, I don't blame you. I have, like, if I drive 360 miles a week for work.
Wow.
My commute is
what do you do for work?
I am a care coordinator for a home health agency. I really love my job, though. I really like what I do. I'm making decent money. It's a lot of problems. It's a perfect job for someone with ADHD. I can't, like, it just is. And I love what I do. But the commute sucks. I spend like $120 a week for gas, because well, not that much. I pay $60. Well, no, I pay $120. Okay, wait a minute. Let me do math. I'm gonna do math, guys. Okay, $120 once a month, because it costs me $60 a week. $30 a week. $30 a week, and then 30 times 120. Yeah, 120 a month.
Yeah, that's a lot of gas money right there.
That's a lot of gas money. Yeah, and sometimes more and sometimes more if I have to drive other places, because usually on the weekends I don't go anywhere, because that means, well, if I go anywhere somebody else is driving. I'm not driving.
Yeah, because you've driven enough.
I refuse. I'm like, I don't want to drive.
Yeah, you need to rest. But so anyhow,
exactly.
I came down here and I was preaching for, on the weekends when I wasn't on the radio, I was, filling the pulpit around and stuff like this. And this one little church, their pastor had left, and I got sent over there to fill their pulpit, and they just really liked the way I preached. And this guy came aside and he said, "How come you're not a pastor?" And I said, "Well, I used to be one, but I got, I left before I got run off. I'm pretty much just damaged goods. You probably don't want to have anything to do with me." Because that was what I was thinking about myself. Well, they really wanted to have something to do with me. So over the course of like 6 months or so, they finally decided they wanted me to be their pastor. And I started at I started at this church on February 1st, 1998, and I was the pastor there from February 1st, 1998, all the way to November 22nd, 2016.
Oh wow, that's almost 18 years. That's a haul. That's an adult.
Yeah, that was a long time. But what got me in trouble was I would not support Donald Trump because, like I said, I got run off in 2016, but I had deconverted. I realized I didn't believe in God anymore in 2010. So here I am. Totally, I've been watching. I don't know how old you are, Helen, but I'm old enough to remember when Donald Trump was a big deal back in the 70s and the 80s. And I've been watching this guy for years, and I didn't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole. But man, all the white men, which was almost at that point there weren't any non-white men. They were all white men, but they were all on board for Donald Trump, and they found out that I wasn't. So this deacon takes me aside, and he says to me, he says, "Preacher, we know you don't like Donald Trump. First of all, nobody cares what you think, and nobody cares what you've got to say. Second of all, if you vote..."
Wait a second.
Huh? Yeah.
Wait a second. Aren't you? Okay, keep going. I'm sorry. I'm listening. Go ahead.
And if you vote for anybody besides Donald Trump, even if you do not actually cast a ballot for Hillary Clinton, you're a baby killer, and we don't need a baby killer around here. So, okay, I considered myself duly warned, but I didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2016. I voted for Hillary because,
Yeah.
But it's not like you have to go up to the front of the church and tell everybody. But they decided I was untrustworthy because I did not recognize Donald Trump as Jesus Jr. And so they started poking around trying to find some reason to run me off.
Mm-hmm.
And while they were looking around for a reason to run me off, they discovered that I had done a pagan/atheist wedding for some friends of mine.
Damn you!
And these folks they're great people, but a lot of folks took pictures and were posting stuff on Facebook. And somebody came across me officiating a wedding with people that were known atheists and pagans, and somebody showed them this little group I had started about 2 years prior for all my little atheist friends that people I knew that were atheists, and it was totally private.
You start thinking for yourself, man. That's how it happens.
Yeah, this girl who had joined the group, she showed it to a lady who had connections to the church, and she got a screenshot of it, and she went and showed it to these people at the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so on November 22nd, 2016, day before that, which was a Monday, I was supposed to be on vacation because I'd been at the church long enough that I got 4 weeks of vacation. Not really enough time to recover from all the crap I had to put up with, but it was still better than 2 weeks of vacation. So anyhow, I was sitting at the hospital with a couple church members having surgery instead of taking my vacation, and I get this text message that I need to come by our director of missions office tomorrow. And I kept trying to find out what was going on because I assumed it was because I didn't vote for Donald Trump and I was going to get dressed down for speaking against the will of God or something. Well, it was kind of that, but it was really because they had discovered I was an atheist and they wanted to know if I really was an atheist. And I sat there for a few seconds, and the thought ran through my head. I could lie and say this is a honeypot that I set up to get atheists where I could talk to them about Jesus, and I could have probably sold that.
Yeah.
But I decided, nah, I'm tired of this. And I said, yeah, I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist since 2010. And they said, well, you need to leave. I said,
Oh.
okay. Now I could have contested and said, well, if I'm going to leave, you're going to have to fire me. But even if they fired me in Texas, if you work for a church, you cannot get unemployment benefits. It's in state law. So it wouldn't have done me any good unemployment wise.
Right.
But so I wanted to make it easy on them as possible, because I really didn't. That was not how I intended to, come out to the world.
Yeah.
But so I tried to work with them and stuff, and they said, oh, well, we're not going to tell anybody why you're leaving. We're just going to say you're tired, you're old, you're leaving. Well, that was a lie. First thing you know, I'm getting phone calls.
And ageist, but okay, but whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the guy who took me aside and told, laid out the law to me before Sunday school. We don't care what you think. We don't care what you have to say. He's the one that was telling everybody, even though from what I understand from the people that actually met with me at the,
wow,
that wasn't going to happen. Well, it did. Quick aside, this is petty, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway.
Oh, no, give me some petty shit. I love some petty. I love some petty shit. Go ahead.
I ran into this guy and his wife in the big grocery store in Victoria just last week, and I hadn't seen him in like forever. And I saw him standing there, and this is what I do whenever I see anybody from my former church or even former people that are Christian that I know are Christian. Put on a big smile, stick out my hand, say their name. Hey, how you doing? It's good to see you. Just effusive friendliness. Well, his wife wouldn't have anything to do with me. She just walked off. And I was talking to him, and I said, well, how old? He was looking really bad, too. He was looking like he wasn't doing well. He's like 83. And I said, how old are you? He said, oh, I'm 83 now. And I said, oh, that's you're up there. He said, oh, it's just a number. I said, yeah, that number is going to catch up with you pretty soon, too. And then I said, see you later, and walked off. How's that for petty?
Yeah, I love it though. Listen. I'm a petty bitch, so I'm the you're not going to get any complaints from me.
Okay, because that's the guy that took me aside and told me, hey, you don't vote for Trump, you're voting for Hillary. It's like,
okay, so like a difference of opinion, like your political views, like. I don't know. Like I just find that to lose your job. Well, though, like people are like that. I understand. I had one of our new coworkers say something racist to me the other day, and I looked at them and I go, "That's racist." And then I'm like, so again, people will just say things and do things, and you're just looking at them. I'm like, why do you think that's okay for you to say to me? But okay. Also, good for you for not wanting to, vote for a known sexual assaulter. Like, good for you, and just an all-around terrible person.
Yeah. See, he lost me back when he, before he ditched Ivanka for Marla Maples. But I just wasn't going to vote for him. But yeah, the way it works is just like the ultimate cause of me losing my job was I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but the proximate cause, the actual reason they used to get rid of me was, being an atheist. And it's like, like I said, I think I could have sold the whole honeypot thing, but I would have had to shut down my little group and all that. And it's like, I'm tired of playing this religion game, because it was hard getting up there every Sunday, twice on Sunday, once on Wednesday night, to preach about stuff that I didn't believe. And what I ended up doing, a friend of mine suggested this. He said, because I was just so conflicted, I felt like such a bad, awful, terrible person doing this. And he said, well, what you need to do is you need to look at it as an acting job. You're going to be the best Baptist preacher they ever had. I thought, okay. And so that's how I approached it from 2010 to 2016. And what's funny is that after I started acting as a Baptist preacher, they liked my sermons better. They thought I was a better pastor because I wasn't. When I still believed, I had certain views about the Bible and stuff that didn't quite line up with the preferred things, like with eschatology, the second coming of Christ. I was not a rapture dispensationalist kind of guy, and that was terrible because all the TV preachers are dispensationalists, and most all the Baptist preachers I knew were dispensationalists, but I just didn't buy it because I sat down and I spent some time studying the text of Revelation and other sources for a New Testament class I was in. I had to write a 35-page paper about this, and by the time I got done with my research, it's like I can't. I was a dispensationalist at that time, but I just couldn't do it because it's like, no, there is no reason to believe that dispensationalist crap.
Right.
No reason at all. No reason to believe in a pre-tribulational rapture. When Jesus comes back, the rapture and his return are coterminous events. They both happen at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't like that. They didn't like it when I would preach about that. But after I decided I'm just going to be the best Baptist preacher, boy, every word was a pearl of wisdom because I was preaching what I knew all the other preachers were preaching. And so my preaching was much more well received after I admitted to myself that I was an atheist. Oh, right. Let's get back to how I got there.
Let's circle back around there.
Yeah. Okay. So anyhow, I'm pastoring this church, and in 2006, there was a big sex scandal in the Republican Party. Surprise, surprise. They had a bunch of predator.
You don't say.
Yeah, a bunch of predator stuff was going on, and with a guy named Mark Foley and another guy named Larry Craig, who was a senator. Foley was a representative, and there were some other people. I don't remember who they were, but they were all they were. It just wasn't going on. They were being deliberately protected by the leadership of the House. The Speaker of the House. The guy's name just popped out of my head. He's in prison now for child molestation. Gosh, what was his name? Anyhow, he, they were actively protecting him, and I thought, man, that's bad. So I started doing some research, and that's when I came to the conclusion that the family values thing that they're always harping on and going on about, they really don't believe in family values. They believe in money and control.
Yep.
And they were using that family value stuff to basically give away the farm to their big donor bases, their million and billionaire donors. And so I had the first step in my conversion was I realized that the Republican Party was not what they claimed to be, and that they were not the party of God, and that I've never voted for Republican since then in any election.
Right.
Second stage in my deconversion experience, I came across a book written by a guy named Frank Schaeffer. Have you ever heard of Frank Schaeffer?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, see, Frank Schaeffer and his dad were a big deal back in the 1970s. His dad was a guy named Francis Schaeffer, and they were the two evangelicals who were what's the word I'm looking for? Well, anyhow, they got all the preachers like Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson and all those guys to get on the anti-abortion bandwagon.
Oh.
And so
that sounds about right.
That sounds about right. So Jerry Falwell, what a rancid piece of shit human being. Because his thing was, before that, you're talking about racist. He was a huge racist. But anyhow, so he and his dad got them on board for all this, and later on as he got older, he regretted what he had conned his father and these other people into doing, and so he wrote this book called "Crazy for God," talking of where he described how they went about getting all these people, these preachers and stuff, to get on board for anti-abortion stuff. But in the process,
Oh.
he also described the character of these people. You know, that basically they're
Uh-oh.
all just a bunch of thugs and grifters and, you know, money grubbing, power hungry, just bad
Pieces
people.
of shit. Like just pieces of shit.
Yeah. Because yeah. And so they're just pieces of shit, like you said. And so that made me realize that all these big gun preachers that I was supposed to be idolizing, if you will, or looking up to, and all this stuff, they weren't worth my time, because they weren't just flawed, they were actively engaged in anti-Christian, anti-family practices. They were just doing it to make themselves look bigger and better and get more stuff. Okay, so this is about 2007-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2009, I went to see, you know who Michael Shermer is?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the publisher of Skeptic Magazine. Well, he was,
Yep.
our junior college has a Lyceum program where they have speakers come in and talk about stuff. Well, Shermer was there talking about his book, Why People Believe Weird Things, and why smart people believe weird things. And so I'm sitting here listening to this, you know, it's a little, we got to jump in here for a second. Also, my wife from about 2001 through 2004 had gone back to college. And she went to Texas Lutheran University, which is in Seguin, Texas. And the New Testament theology teacher there was a guy named Norman Beck, and he was not a fundamentalist in any way, shape, or form. He was more of he was a very critical scholar. And his big thing was how anti-Semitic the New Testament is.
Yeah.
And so she sat under him, she got her music degree and all this, but he had implanted some critical thinking into her mind. And so, you know,
that's how it happens. See?
Yeah, I'd been thinking about all this stuff with the Republicans. I'd been thinking about all this stuff with these big gun preachers, because I'd always kind of thought of myself as a critical thinker. I just, as I look back on it, I was just using the wrong premise to start with.
Right.
My reasoning from, you know, the Bible is true and Jesus is real. So anyhow, we're in this Lyceum program, and he does. You're familiar with the gorilla video? Where
yes.
The gorilla, yeah. Okay. Well, he does that little thing there with the audience, and then he plays it. He asks how many people saw the gorilla, and I think 1 or 2 people raised their hand, and we're all looking at gorilla. What gorilla? Well, he backs it up and plays it. You see the gorilla walk out there and wave, and all this sort of stuff. And I realized at that moment that my ability to perceive reality was not what I thought it was. I'd always had this idea that I was able to see and understand and know all the things I could see, understand, and know. And all of a sudden I realized, whoa, that gorilla walked right out there, and I did not see him because I was focused on something else. And that made me realize that all this religious stuff that I had been indoctrinated with, I was not perceiving reality accurately.
Right. And
so I started reading a bunch of different authors. I read Hitchens' books. I read Dawkins' books. I read Sam Harris's books actually, and I read several other atheist books. And I was cruising the internet looking for information, and the moment I really after I saw that, after I realized my perception was flawed, that was when I began to doubt the legitimacy of the Bible. Because one of the big things that was part of my ministry was I was super big on the reliability and the inerrancy and the infallibility and the accuracy of the Bible. And when I would get up to preach, I would always, to pray, I would say things. I'd start off with say, Lord, da 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 da, and then I would quote Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12. For the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword. It to the division of the soul and the spirit, the joints and the marrow, and it is the discerner, or rather, he is the discerner of the thoughts and intentions of our heart, and we are laid bare before him with whom we have to do. Lay us bare before your word today, O Lord, as we seek to understand and serve you. Or prior to that. And when I realized I couldn't trust my perceptions, that's when I realized that what if I'm wrong about the Bible? What if I'm wrong about all these religious things I've experienced? And so I started doing a lot of reading brain research and stuff about how the brain works, and pareidolia.
Pareidolia, yeah.
Yeah, that one. Thank you. That sort of thing. And the final nail in the coffin, though, was there's a website called Why Won't God Heal Amputees?
Yep.
And I went there and I was looking at this. Something had recommended it. Someone or something had recommended it to me. And I went and looked at that. And when I realized, God will heal grandma's infected ingrown toenail, or maybe help her get over the cold, even make her cancer go away. But God never has grown anybody's arm back or leg back.
No. God will not heal amputees. It's so weird.
Why won't God heal amputees? And when I read that, I realized I can't believe in this crap anymore.
Right.
Because God, he talks about Jesus heals people and all this, and yeah, he sticks a guy's ear back on his head, but that's not the same thing.
As you do.
Yeah, as one does,
As one does.
Again, as I moved further through, I began to understand that the Gospels and all the books in the Bible were not direct accounts of real experience. They're all literary creations.
You don't say.
Yeah.
Weird.
Like I think of it as fiction with a little history flavoring sprinkled on top to make it more interesting. Right. And so that's when I realized, okay, I don't believe anymore. So, okay, we're at home, not this house. I was actually living in the original homestead at that time, my wife and I. And she came home. We were getting ready to go to church because she was leading the music at one church and I was preaching at a different church. And we're getting ready to leave. And she finally said to me, I wish I had written down the date and all this stuff. But she says to me, she says, Alan, I hate to tell you this, you may divorce me, but I just can't believe this stuff anymore. And I stood there for a second and I thought to myself, I guess I'll tell her because she just told me, and I told her that, I can't either. Ever since I went to see Michael Shermer, she said, yeah. And, so we both ended up deconverting approximately the same time.
Oh, that's impressive.
We just didn't talk about it. We just didn't talk about it to each other while it was going on.
Yeah.
So then I spent 6 years in the pulpit as a non-believer, preaching to believers. And that's what really offended some of the folks when I finally got outed and run off, is that, how dare you stand up there and, pretend that you know what the Lord has to say when you don't even believe yourself. And at this point, I'm kind of like,
neither do you, motherfucker.
You don't know either.
That'd be my response.
Yeah, you don't know either.
Yeah.
And so I got fired and cleaned out my office with 18 years worth of stuff in it and hied myself back to Mission Valley.
It is like the thing that's so kind of sad is like, I've lost jobs for being like, not performing up to like, snuff or whatever, like, like normal, like, human hubris kind of stuff that you lose a job for. Okay. I'm not like, but for having a different opinion, I've never been fired for that. Like I've been fired, like I've had a job and got fired for some bullshit reasons and that I thought in my brain, but never for a difference of opinion. And then to basically when when you're going through the process, like, and then going like, well, why did you stay? Like, you knew, and it's like, well, what else was I supposed to do? I've been doing this for like ever. Like, it's not like I can just go into the job market. That's why things like the Clergy Project exist, because people, when they leave religion and that's the only thing what do you do? And when you've been making your money that way.
Oh, I forgot to mention, one of the reasons I stayed is that both my parents had gotten to the point where they needed to be in the nursing home.
See, yeah.
So I was having to finance that.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Like, and it doesn't make you I don't like, there's people like, they talk about like having integrity, and I'm like, yes, you can have integrity as much as you want, but also at the same time, like, integrity is not going to pay my bills.
That's right. Integrity wasn't going to pay my bills. It wasn't going to help me take care of my mom and dad. And at 50 years old, they're probably, that you're at the edge of where it's hard to find a job. And all my education was old. I was old, and there's not much work experience that being a preacher translates into in the secular world.
What could you do? I don't know what kind of drive that would like bring you.
Well, what I ended up doing is, after I got fired in 2016, I sold a lot of stuff. It's not like I was rolling in dough and had a bunch of stuff laying around, but I started selling things. But I got a quote, a volunteer position with a stipend through AmeriCorps Vista. And I did that for 2 years.
Okay.
And when they say stipend, we're talking like $1,000 and a little change a month.
Okay.
And some food stamps.
Yeah.
So we're talking. Of course, I'm not doing that much better now on Social Security, but so I did that for 2 years, and then the job.
Enjoy your Social Security while it lasts, man.
I'm sorry?
I said enjoy your Social Security while it lasts.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. I hate to say it. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean to go off a rant. But anyway, go back to your story.
Rant about Social Security.
I hate the government right now. It just drives me crazy. I don't understand. I hate capitalism.
I don't like capitalism either. All it's ever done
but we're stuck in the system. You can criticize it and still be stuck dealing with it.
Yeah. All capitalism ever done for me is stuck it to me.
Right.
Picked me up, bent me over, and fucked me hard.
Yep, and didn't even ask for consent.
So, no consent, no lube, no nothing.
No, nothing. It was all kinds of bad.
All kinds of bad. That's right. So I did that for a couple of years, and then the job ran out because
I'll pause right there. I can hear you. I have to go to the bathroom, so keep talking.
Oh, okay, no problem. I will just keep talking.
Yes, keep talking.
Okay. So anyhow, I had to. I did that for a couple of years, and then the organization I was working with went through some major negative changes, and they could no longer afford to. The AmeriCorps wouldn't keep me there. Vista wouldn't keep me there, so I lost that job. And then this is in 2019, and I got a job with the Victoria Public Library, and that turned out to be a nightmare. I did not fit into their culture at all, and I did not. The lady I worked directly for, she was that's a good way to put it. She was mean. She was a mean woman. She followed me around and just, had people reporting on me to her and stuff. I couldn't seem to do anything right. And so I lost that. I started in August of 2019. I got fired in December of 2019. Just like if I'd stayed a month longer and they fired me, I could have gotten unemployment. But they canned me. So that job paid $10 an hour. And so I got, a little boost to my Social Security because the AmeriCorps Vista stuff.
Rolling in it in the green.
Yeah, the AmeriCorps Vista stuff didn't pay any Social Security. It just paid income tax because since it's a stipend, it's not it wasn't subject to Social Security. So I basically missed out 6 years of Social Security before I had to go on Social Security. And the most money I ever made working for this particular church or any church was $24,000 a year. So I mean, I didn't have much Social Security to look at to begin with. So anyhow, 2020 comes around, and I did a wedding for some atheist friends of mine on February 29th, and that was the last time I went out in public until after the COVID thing had been going on for a long time. Because that was just like the next week was when the shit literally hit the fan. Of course, probably RFK Jr. would stand in front of the fan and say, "Oh yeah, hit me with it, man."
Right.
Germs don't cause disease.
Yeah.
But so then,
wow.
I was basically living. We were living off of those two government things that got sent out, and basically me begging for money and selling things.
Yeah.
I sold all of my. My dad had quite a few guns. I sold all the guns. I sold all the gold jewelry I could find. I sold coins old coin. I mean, I sold literally.
Listen, when my kids were young, my husband weren't financially secure. We sold so much shit that we cared about, that we wanted to keep, because it's like I need food on the table. Yeah.
You can't eat that. You can't eat that shotgun.
You can't eat the shotgun.
Well, you can
try.
You don't want to eat that way though, because then you're not going to be eating anything else after that. But I did that, begged for money for March 2020 to January 1st, 2003. Yeah. Sold stuff.
Yeah.
So
but I mean, you got to do what you have to do to survive. That's why, like, when people are, I don't know if it's like this lack of like I haven't experienced like everything everybody else does, but like I have experienced being poor, and it's not easy, and it's not a dirty word. Poor is not a dirty word. That means that we are not playing capitalism well, because it's rigged against us. So
that's right.
I just I'm comfortable, but also I live with my oldest has to live with me, and I have a roommate that live with me and Todd because we cannot afford our house on our own. So, but I live in Florida and it's expensive to live here. So you gotta work something out, man. Like, nobody can live in a single family home anymore. Like, it's impossible unless you're like making like really good money, or you have to downsize. And sometimes that means that you're going to have to sacrifice certain things. And I get really mad when people are like, well, you're just not working hard enough. I'm like, dude, you don't know somebody else's circumstance. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, stop. Like, this is not measured the value of a person. So shut up. Money tells me nothing about you. Nothing. It's always how do you treat other human beings? Then I'm like, okay, like, because you can be rich or poor. If you're an asshole, you're just an asshole.
That's right. You're asshole rich.
Yep. Or you're an asshole poor. You're just an asshole.
Yeah, there are asshole poor people, but it's like the only reason Mrs. Coffey and I were not homeless is because I inherited a house. Right. And even then, after that, I had to convince the state of Texas not to take it away from me and sell it to pay themselves back for Medicaid and all that to take care of my parents in the nursing home. But fortunately, when you're making less than $1,000 a month, you definitely fit the hardship criteria pretty easily.
So
that
does your wife work?
no,
Okay. Does she work? Did she work when you were a pastor, or was that your income?
No, she worked when I was a pastor.
Okay.
Most of it, she was a music minister at a Methodist church in
okay.
a town north of here. That's why she was going to college back when I was talking about her being in college and encountering the great critical mind of Norman Beck.
Yeah.
And she went and did their music at this Methodist church for 11 years. She quit over there about 2015 after, one of the few periods of time in our lives when we had insurance.
Ooh.
She had both of her carpal tunnels done at the same time. And because we were going to originally just do one and then do the other, but our insurance wasn't going to, the same Obamacare policy wasn't going to be available next year. And so we talked to the surgeon and said, well, can you do them both at the same time? And he said, well,
right.
Are you willing to wipe your wife's butt? I said, yes, I am. And I did.
Yep.
And I took care of her while she couldn't do anything with both her hands. And so we ended up, doing that. It actually saved us money because the other insurance policy would have made it prohibitively expensive to do that for the next year, to do like one and then the one next year. So yeah, we did that, and that was in December of 2015. So it was just just about a year before I got canned.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't love Donald Trump like Jesus Christ loved Donald Trump or whatever.
Yeah, I don't. I just. Well, and this is the thing that I really hate about the hypocrisy of religion is that they didn't have to I understand. I kind of get the atheism thing. I kind of get that, like a little tiny bit. I kind of get that. I get but like totally. political shit, I don't. But like if you're if they find out you're an atheist and you're preaching and the whole thing is like you're supposed to be Southern Baptist and believe in the risen Christ and all the whole thing, I kind of get that. Like I do. Yeah. But but also Christian charity should be like, we're gonna give you like a severance. Wouldn't you think that, out of Christian charity, hey, you don't believe anymore, we can't really have you doing the hypocrisy, but we can help you transition into secular life. I keep putting expectations when people talk about charity to fellow human beings, and I'm holding them accountable. Weird.
Because what happened with me was, they paid me for the last 2 weeks of my vacation, and that was it. Booted me out the door. Don't let the door hit you, or the good Lord split you.
Okay.
So and
mm-hmm.
I really felt bad about what happened and how it happened, because that wasn't how I wanted to do it. But at the same time, why were you looking for a reason to run me off just because I didn't vote for Donald Trump? And I wasn't going to vote for Donald Trump.
And the thing is, what would have prompted them to look into your past if they found out that you weren't going to vote for Trump, which is gross. I don't understand that. I might not like someone that votes for Trump, but also I wouldn't actively go into the background and want to fire them from their job.
Yeah, see, I never talked about politics from the pulpit.
Yeah.
I never said anything about, don't vote for Donald Trump. My stance always was, God wants us to vote, and you need to pray about whom you believe God wants you to vote for. Well, mm-hmm. with the exception of me and maybe 3 other people in the church, they all decided God wanted them to vote for Donald Trump. And apparently, if the preacher's not going to vote for Donald Trump, well, then the preacher needs to hit the trail, because he's being disobedient to the Lord. If all of us other fine, upstanding Christian mostly, well, it was all men. There weren't any women involved, except when I got fired. It was all men. And I remember now what got me in trouble was at a church council meeting, which was a meeting we had to talk about stuff before we had the actual business meeting that we had every month. This woman was upset because she didn't like the fact that she had seen on my Facebook page that I was not in favor of Donald Trump. And she said this just out loud in this meeting. And that guy that read me the Riot Act or the Trump Act, whatever you want to call it, he was in that meeting.
Oh. Okay.
And I remember him saying, "What? Our preacher doesn't think I'm a Trump supporter. I want other Trump supporters to come here. And our preacher's not a Trump supporter." Okay. And then that's what planted the seed. I'd forgotten about that. So that's what set up the.
So he was pearl clutching. He was like, because you were just like, I just don't like this guy. I think you have power. But they got what they wanted anyway. They got what they wanted, and as I say, I hope you get exactly what you voted for.
Well, because what I told him, there were some other components to that conversation when he confronted me about all this and said, we don't need a baby killer. Well, I said, well, aren't you concerned that Donald Trump cheated on his first wife with his second wife, and cheated on his second wife with his third wife, and cheated on his third wife who was at home nursing their baby or had somebody else taking care of a newborn baby with a porn star? Oh, that's just all locker room talk. Or going around and grab them by the pussy. Is that? Oh, that's just men bragging and stuff. And it's like, okay, fine, whatever, bro.
Okay.
But so, and then his ace card.
There's that hypocrisy I keep talking about.
Bill Clinton, oh my God, he was an awful person for all the demonstrably predatory things he did. But Donald Trump, he's not predatory at all. But
right.
He said, well, all the president of the Southern Baptist Convention and all the former presidents of the Southern Baptist Convention, they all support Trump. Pastor of the largest Southern Baptist church in the world, Jeffress up there at First Baptist Church Dallas, he supports Donald Trump. Okay. So that meant, what my opinion was. Yeah, it was bad. It left me scarred.
You are scarred.
I have a lot of unresolved anger and a huge magma chamber of rage.
Oh, I don't blame you though. I don't, and I think there's not enough appreciation of those of us that kind of grew up in those situations. Not so much myself. Like I didn't go through where my livelihood was dependent on my religious background. I've never experienced that. Thank goodness, because oh boy, I know who I am. but I totally understand. And also too, I hate hypocrisy. I hate it. I'm like if you're like an anti-vaxxer and you also do not take money from supplement, you don't spend money on supplements, you are I'm gonna listen, you might be doing some, but at least you're logically consistent. At least there's a through line through the whole thing. But you can't pick and choose. I don't care what political party you belong to. If you are a predator, I just think you're an asshole and you should not have power. And I don't care where your political politics are. Do not care. Because you should not have power. Right. If you are okay taking power away from another human being.
Yeah.
You are gross.
Yeah, and see, and the thing is, I remember when when Obama was president, those people at that church, they were freaking the fuck out because a black man.
A black man, what? But also racism is over according to them because we had a black man president.
Yeah.
So make sense.
Yeah, because what it boils down to is that I can't claim credit for this. I actually read an article where a guy talks about this and a little light went on in my head. What it boils down to is people, particularly religious people, see a certain order in society. Things are going to be a certain, things are, it's like, God's up here, and then the angels, Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit are up here, and you got angels, and then you have men, and then you have women, and then you have children, and then you have slaves or whatever, and then you have white people, and everybody else. Black people, brown people, and all this, and it blows their. And even they may not even be able to articulate that. They may not even think they believe that, but that's how they view the world. And when a black man, a person who's not supposed to be that high up on the hierarchy, becomes president, it just that they can't handle it.
Yeah,
and they freak out. Because I had a guy, I had an old man. Every time I'd see him on Sunday or Wednesday night, he would tell me, I'm still looking. Finally asked him, said, I'm looking for what? To find where Obama is the Antichrist. And he would tell me that every time I saw him. He was searching the Bible looking to yeah. And I told him, I said, why you do it? Well, he's got to be the Antichrist. And I said, why? Well, he's just got. It's like he never would. He either didn't understand or refused to say out loud that he thought he was the Antichrist because he was a black man. Right.
Yeah. Well, you can't say that because that's racist. But if you say like he's a Muslim, because they would say, as people pointed out that it's Barack Hussein Obama, like not Barack Obama, and it's like, because we don't go like, like Bill Clinton or, George Bush Jr. We don't tend to emphasize middle names unless like that when you're being referred by your middle name, that means you're being scolded, because usually your mother would yell at you.
I knew I was in trouble.
And you're like, oh no, I'm in trouble.
I knew I was in trouble when my mother was like, Alan Thurman Coffey, what are you doing?
That's right. Like I was like, Helen Almedia Joseph, what are you doing? And I'd be like, oh, okay.
I done crossed a line in the sand.
Yeah, that's how you know. And that's why and I think there's a lot of refusal to look at nuance, one, and two is that I get really frustrated because the same people that didn't like Obama being president were the same people that believe in like white replacement theory, and, those type of people. And I'm over here, I'm like, listen, I'm like, we are the colonizers. I am so sorry to tell you that.
You're
right. And we're all mixed anyway. Like, I'm like, granted, like I've gotten my 23andMe. I am all the white people. All of them, all the white people countries. Like, there's the most diverse part of me is like I'm 0.01% Jewish. Like, that is most. Oh, okay. And I'm mostly is like Balkan, Irish, German, Albanian, Greek, like all those, all the white people. It's fine.
Well, I've never done a DNA test, but you can just kind of look at me and
you just say like you're pasty.
I'm Mr. Pasty.
And I never understood why hair texture and melanin and where you grew up have anything to do with what type of person you are. Please explain. I just don't understand the concept.
Well, race is a social construct.
Yeah.
Culture is definitely definitely something that's different for people. Ethnicity all the things that surround your culture and stuff. That's different for different groups of people. But the
Yeah.
idea of race is something that our fun white friends came up with back before. Well, it was after the Revolutionary War is when it really kicked in, but before the Constitution. And part of the reason why they wrote the Constitution the way they did was they wanted to rein in some of that. They wanted to make sure everybody understood their place
Right.
in the
Right.
world.
And as my friend Cynthia McDonald's pointed out, that whatever social contract you've been taught, it was whatever a capitalist was said that day.
That's right.
Like, yeah, it was a capitalist that said, like, you know, black people are less than white people. It was, you know, a capitalist that said, like, men are greater than women. It was a capitalist that said that, like, you know, straight people are better than queer people. Like, it's always capitalism. It is always some guy that is hanging down for on high to say, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, these people are better than these people. And then you're over here going, like, why is this a thing?
Well, and then, when you show up with all the guns and stuff, you can kind of make it the thing.
Yeah, sure. I don't have, well, the thing is, though, I have a vagina and I have that wandering womb thing. Alan, so I can't have opinions and thoughts because I'm hysterical.
Yeah, you have the old Greek meaning of the story.
Keep up with the track.
Because, you know, men are just so unemotional, you know?
No, very unemotional, all logic driven.
Yeah, getting that, you know.
Always rational.
Just watch Donald Trump, see how rational he is.
He's worried. So we're going to the Gnome Kings protest on Saturday, and I love this. He's worried about people doing like Taco Man jokes, and I'm just like, oh my God. And like, I'm hoping someone makes a taco truck.
That would be great.
Tacos. I was like, please make that happen. Oh my God. I don't believe in a God, but if there's a God, make that happen. I want it so bad. Like, I want that because I love seeing little thin-skinned like men. Like, I'm a real man, like alpha male. I'm like, okay, that's not a thing. One, but two, I'm just like, you are thin-skinned babies. Like, I have a thicker skin than you do, and I'm a lowly woman. So
yeah, I've got thicker skin than you, and look how almost translucent mine is.
Yeah, it's like look how pasty I am.
Yeah, look how pasty I am. Yeah,
I burn first, so I'll go outside and I'll burn, and then I'm tan for like a day, and then it's just back to white person.
I fry. I mean, I cook.
Yeah, I cook
too. I'm wearing this red shirt, and I have been this color many times in my life.
Yeah, I remember last time I got a really bad sunburn. So my kids were school age. I would say about 10, 12 years ago. Me and my friends had a beach day, and I thought that I had put on sunscreen. And this is why I know I'm a vampire, because I don't go outside. And then like I had like this really bad sunburn, and like the tan lines didn't go away for like 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Because like I had, well, when I was a child, I got 2nd-degree burns from a sunburn.
Ooh,
when I was 8 years old.
Before.
Yeah, I was 8 years old. It was we were in Barbados. And because I was spending all the time in the pool, not only I'm getting the sun reflecting down on me, you're getting the reflection off the pool, you know. So basically you're getting all this UV light into a very white person's skin. And I got skin poisoning, and I spent 4 days of the 7-day vacation we had in the hotel room, because the doctor was like, you can't let her outside.
Yeah, so that would be worse.
It would be worse, yeah. And my poor parents had to keep switching on and off of who was going to watch me, and it kind of fucked up their vacation. So I was 8. You know?
Oh, well, you know.
That was just a side story, but it's one of those things about like bringing it back to, you know, people in your community like being all fucking mad because Obama became president, and it's just like, why are you mad, bro? Why Why are you mad?
Hey, we had the Secret Service down here at one point because somebody somebody put up, I forget which psalm it is that talks about, may his office be vacant and his wife a widow and his kids orphans, and may they all basically die too. Had it put up on a billboard on the main drag through Victoria, Highway 77. And the Secret Service came down, had a little talk with that guy
Mm-hmm.
about,
Okay.
why do you have this up here, bro? and then it went away after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but see, yeah, we are. If you were to look at a map of all the counties in the South, from Georgia, Virginia, and just all the way to the west, Victoria is, demographically and culturally speaking, the last county that's considered Old South to the west.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you go north, there's some more north of here, but going, this far down, we are the final county before you go into what they call southwestern type culture. And so, we had slaves, we had the whole shebang. In fact, after the Texas Revolution, this town was originally founded by a Mexican man and his wife in 1824. And after the Texas Revolution, and of course, Texas won, all the Anglos came in here and ran all the Mexican people off and confiscated their land, even though these same Mexican people had helped them fight against Santa Anna and his guys.
Okay.
They stole it. They stole almost all the land for themselves.
That tracks.
Killed or yeah.
That tracks.
That's total white man.
That's total white man. That's total white man. Like, I'm like, that tracks. Like, that's totally our people.
That is totally white people. Yeah.
Hold on. Someone different than me has something that I want. Wait a minute. I'm better than you. I'm going to take it. And
That's right. It's my manifest destiny. God told me I could have it.
Okay. No, motherfucker. You came from Europe, and Europe had all the money because you came from a kingdom that had to control the wealth, and then you were given a bunch of money to come over and colonize. That's why. And then you brought biological warfare and better weapons against people that didn't know what was happening to them. And you did like the benevolent racism thing. And then you took over their land. That's what you did. Don't give me this manifest destiny. Like John Wayne said, he was like, I don't understand, like, the Native Americans not giving up their land. Like, they had all this land and they wouldn't give it to us. We had to fight for it. And I'm like, oh my God, John Wayne. Oh my God.
He was of the opinion that they weren't doing anything with it, so they should just give it to us. And that's why we killed them all.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, but also he also like beat women on set, and he was a sexual predator, also a terrible human being. So fuck John Wayne. Listen, fine as an actor. I've seen Stagecoach. It's a fine movie. He was but also an asshole. Like, you're a terrible person. I don't care how good and not handsome. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the only pictures I've ever seen of him, because I'm interested in old movies, and is he was in some movie from like 1932 or something like that flopped. They were trying to pitch him as the new leading man, and it flopped. But he looks much better than he did for most of his life. But I certainly wouldn't call him good.
No,
looking.
I do not like. Oh, to be fair, it just to other, like, beauty subjective. So to other people, he might have been considered handsome. Fine, cool. Just for me, I'm just like, this guy does nothing for me. Was it The Big Trail? from 1930?
The big trail. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. He was actually in the picture I'm looking at of him right now. Not bad.
I mean, he's definitely better looking than I've ever been in my entire life in that picture. But he's not bad, but he certainly. But like
he looks about typical, like a 6 white guy. I think also too, I know what type of person he is, and that just like reduces my attraction to him because I'm like, you're kind of gross. So like I know who you are. I think people that may have lived in the ignorance of what terrible person he was, like back in the day, or like he's so pretty. I'm like,
not that pretty.
Not so much pretty. So you went to Michael Shermer's talk, and that was like was that the beginning, like the start of the cracks, or were you, and then was it like you were like, oh my God, why do I believe in any of this stuff? Or was it like, and you just had a moment, or it was like slowly looking at everything you believed in, like kind of breaking it down?
Well, what happened was when I realized that my perceptions were not, as accurate and in touch with reality as I had always thought they were. The first thing I had to do was I had to start doing some research, and so I started, researching and thinking about my situation. So I went to, the internet, and like I said, I got the books I talked about earlier, Dawkins and Hitchens and Harrison. I also read several of Shermer's books, including the book that this lecture was based on, Why People Believe Weird Things. And as I got a better understanding of how my brain worked and stuff, I began to realize that I had an unreliable narrator, you might say. I was told these things were true, and my perception kind of agreed with that, but now looking at them in a different light, I don't know about that. I mean, do I really believe a snake talked to somebody? Do I really believe a donkey talked to somebody? Do I really believe that God scooped up a handful of dirt and made somebody out of it? Do I really believe that? And I got to, start applying critical thinking and stuff, and it's like, no, I can't buy that. I can't buy that. There's not any. The problem was the things I thought verified what I believed in the past under the new regimen of, okay, my perceptions are not as, my perceptions are compromised compared to what I thought they were before. That just didn't hold up under scrutiny anymore. About when I would look at something and say, okay, well, this is proof. Well, now it's like, how do I know that that's proof? Because it's just some guy saying that this is true. And it's like some guy telling me that, oh yeah, the Bible is the literal word oh God. It's
word oh God.
Word oh God. It's literally the word oh God. And then it's inerrant, infallible on everything that it speaks to, and that it's the exact representation of what God wants us to know. And it's like, okay, I'm just really not buying that as hard. It was a long process, because this was in 2009 when I saw this. It wasn't until 2010 that I really realized, after I went to see the Why Won't God Heal Amputees, that I realized this is all bullshit. Not only are my perceptions flawed, but the things that I was perceiving are even more flawed. When people will tell me, oh, I had the spiritual experience, like when I pray, I got to thinking I got the appraising my thoughts. I would think to myself, the only voice I ever hear inside my head is me.
Right?
I don't ever hear I had one experience where I thought I heard somebody say something to me, uh, and that could, knowing what I know about brain science now, it's probably some sort of auditory hallucination brought on by the fact that uh,
You grew up in
whatever.
a religious environment,
Yeah.
and you're learning to trust that over your own logic. Like,
And also,
yeah, I totally get that.
and I also got to where I started keeping tally on prayer requests. What people ask for, things like somebody not to die and stuff like that. And that didn't even work out to 50-50. It was more like, 40 something prayer requests answered versus 50% of prayer requests answered. I just kind of kept, and that further eroded my trust when I realized that, I had always put a great deal of emphasis on prayer. I prayed a bunch. I encouraged my people to pray a bunch, to the point where some of them didn't like it. They thought I was wasting too much time on prayer and not enough time on preaching. But when I started realizing my perceptions were flawed, and that voice inside my head always sounded just like me.
Right.
I don't know.
So,
man.
Side note, just a little thing about this. Have you ever seen The Prince of Egypt, the DreamWorks movie?
I know about it, but I have never actually watched it.
It's a very good. It's actually, if you ignore the biblical context of like Passover, it's actually a very good movie. It's very entertaining. It's a good story. The music slaps. Patrick Stewart does a very good Pharaoh. Val Kilmer's in it. It's a good. Ray Fiennes. It's a good movie. It's a. Goldblum's in it. It's a good movie. But what I found very interesting about it is that when Moses talks to the burning bush, and the Moses are like, "I am what I am," it replies back in Val Kilmer's voice. So I was like, huh, that was an interesting acting choice, DreamWorks. Because they could have made it a different voice, but they made it Val Kilmer's voice, who was playing Moses.
Well, what's wild too is it's like in the Bible, it's very clear that the people that hear things from God, it's very clear it's not them hearing themselves. The way it's narratively presented, it's always God speaking to them.
Yeah, but why does God sound like me? And it's constantly this doesn't make any.
But my point though is,
I didn't get to speak to God. But remember, I'm a woman. I can't talk to God. God can't talk to me because I have a vagina.
You got to talk to either the priest or God's mama.
I need a man to tell me, basically. Well, I'm a Catholic, so you talk to Mary.
Yeah, talk to Mary. Jesus will always do with his mother.
Her name is based on Marine, who was, which is based on a old French sea goddess, which comes from the Greek, which came from like virgin goddesses. But also a lot of her myth is also based on Inia and other sacrificial goddess or Isis, these virgins that give birth to the Savior. So that's her myth. So it's just all the same shit. It's all pagan. Everything's pagan.
You dig down far enough, everything is ultimately pagan. But yeah, so it wasn't like an instant aha moment,
right?
But it was more like as I questioned more and more things that I had perceived to be of God, I began to realize that they weren't. They were either me talking to myself, somebody telling me stuff that God has told them, or it was just bullshit. And eventually I just kind of reached the point where I realized, after particularly the more I studied brain science, it's like there is absolutely no reason to think that any of this stuff in here in the Bible or in the doctrines or anything is anything more in a lot of cases than just somebody got a hold of something and sent them off on a wild trip, like Ezekiel, for instance. There's all sorts of weird ass shit in the book of Ezekiel. You got wheels within wheels, covered with eyes, and angels having
Oh my
eyes.
God,
All
I want this, and they make them on Etsy. I want a accurately biblical angel for the top of my tree. It is the
you
with
want a
the
seraphim?
eyeballs, like it's the best thing ever. It's the best because it's eldritch horror shit, and that's my jam.
Yeah, you want a seraphim with 2 wings. He covered his face. With 2 wings, he covered his feet, and with 2 wings, he flew. And he was because seraphim in Hebrew means the burning ones, and the idea was the ones burning with God's glory. They're on fire, baby. I guess that's where they got the whole idea of being on fire for Jesus and God. I didn't usually exaggerate it that much when I preached, but
I do appreciate the exaggeration though. Okay, I'm gonna share this just because it's too great not to share. So I'm gonna share. So I'm gonna do my screen and we're gonna do my biblical. Okay, so these are all these stupid biblically accurate angel toppers, and they're the best. Like I love them.
Wow, those are great.
Aren't these great? And you can get them for the top of your Christmas tree.
I really like that. I really like that red one that was
this one. Yeah, I like this one a lot. That one's really cool. Yeah. This one, like ones with feathers, and I love the internet. This one's cool. I like that one with the blue. That one's really cool.
That's cool too.
Isn't that pretty? That was so a 3D print. So for all of you who is wondering, what do angels look like?
They don't look like what you've been led to believe.
Cherubs are a very Renaissance thing, so seraphim. So,
well, not only that, but in the if you look at Roman and Etruscan tomb art and Greek tomb art, you find what we would call angels, but they're presented there as gods and demigods of various kinds. They have the wings on their back and all that, and it's like, oh, paganism once again.
Paganism. Well, and I wrote a D&D campaign because I played Dungeons and Dragons based on Revelations, because Sherry, you met at RFR, she was a former Jehovah's Witness, and we were having a night where we were drinking and we were talking, and I said, hey, I go, where in Revelations is it about like the 144,000 like saved people, true Jehovah's Witnesses that are going to go to heaven? And she goes, it's chapter 14. It's chapter 12. But still, like I started reading Revelations. I'm like, this reads like a D&D campaign. And then I had a moment and I wrote one based on Revelations, because it's nuts. Revelations is a fever dream. And you're talking about Ezekiel, a fever dream. I'm like, these people are on drugs, because I've done drugs. You're on drugs.
Yeah, they're on drugs.
Yeah. I'm like, oh no. Oh no, my friends.
A guy that I follow, Dan McClellan, he's a biblical scholar.
Yeah.
A critical scholar. And he was pointing out here recently that they found another Jewish temple. It wasn't Jewish technically, but it was, Judean. And they found that there's cannabis and a bunch of other stuff that'll make you higher than a kite residue left on the incense altars.
Yes.
So no wonder you're in there and you're like tripping balls, and you look up like,
whoa, wow, all gonna trip balls. All gonna trip balls.
Tripping balls, man. That's why Isaiah says.
Well, it's one of those things, like, it could have been ergot, it could have been like, the thing is though about like marijuana, it doesn't make you trip balls. Like you're just in this like very relaxed state. So I don't think it was marijuana, but it was definitely ergot. Yeah, mushroom. Definitely ergot or mushrooms, like some kind of like spore got into their brains and made them see like, either, the whore Babylon, or, and the four horses, the apocalypse, and the dragons, and the lion with, I don't know. Is it a griffin? I don't know. It's some weird shit. That's all I know. Also saw biblically accurate, angels. It's just like, yeah, they're tripping. This is what people see when they're on drugs.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and like also, what else you're gonna do in ancient Israel? Like, it's boring.
Yeah, I can't imagine how
you don't have Amazon Prime. You're not watching Andor. You are bored.
You probably don't even know how to read.
Right. Like, so you're gonna do some drugs, and like that's why I think, like, when we look at like if you look at ancient like Indian gods, like everybody's got like multiple arms and they're different colors, and like you got a man with like an elephant head. It's just like,
Ganesh
that's drugs.
Yeah, Ganesh is my favorite Hindu god.
He is my favorite. He is my favorite. He is my favorite.
All the rest of them were kind of, they're mid, but
Ganesha is really cool. I have a Ganesha statue from.
Cool.
Yeah, when I was pagan, I was I culturally appropriated some Hinduism stuff, but like I really do like Ganesha. His mythology is like kind of solid. So. He was guarding a woman while she was taking a bath. And then like some guy was like, hey, I want to come in and like kind of defile her. And he was like, no. And then he defended her. And then somewhere also along the mythology, he lost his head. And then I think I don't think it was Lakshmi, but Shiva gave him, like, because he had lost his head defending Lakshmi, I think.
Oh, okay.
That's how he got the elephant head.
Okay.
Oh my God! I'm a white person that did not grow up in Hinduism explaining this myth. I am probably about 80% wrong about this. Please do not take what I say as gospel, because it's not.
Okay, I will not do that.
Me remembering something that I learned like 15 years ago. Do not listen to me.
Okay.
Don't listen to me as an expert on Hindu mythology, because it will. I probably screwed that up. But I do know it's a story about sacrifice, and that's how he ended up with the godhead of an elephant. He was a man. Cool. I'm sure there's a YouTube video that'll explain that story to you much better than I can.
I've got books I can go look in. Or YouTube.
I have a 2-volume series of all the religions in the world that my husband has from the 1990s, and it still holds up. And and then I have an encyclopedia of the gods, of all the gods, people, and like the known ones of the past 5,000 years when we started recording history. Yeah, it is. They're just like little blurbs about like the gods and where they come from, what culture worship them, what they represent. So we've been doing this forever. That's the one thing I love about paganism, is that your mythology, and I think that's what made it such an easy jump for me to like, because I think I wanted to believe that there was some kind of like universal consciousness or some kind of connection, that like a weave that kind of connected from animism all the way to like I said, Jungian kind of ideas. And then I was just like, I don't really have anything to show, because I went to school and started studying psychology and philosophy. And that was the beginning of the end. And then I worked at a psychic education center for almost 2 years. And that was the definite end. I was like, everything is bullshit. Everything. All we have is just empirical facts, and our own brains just try to make process of the reality we're living in. That is it.
Well, once you realize that most things that are attributed to religion have an actual physical, real world explanation, that kind of sales.
Right. And like, I always try to meet people where they're at. Like, I do a TikTok with the ACA every Tuesday night. And there's this guy. He is a true blue true blue believer, but he is such a nice man. He's such a nice guy and so generally kind, and he likes me. Like he likes it when he comes to TikTok and he talks to me and he listens and he comments in chat. He is a true blue. Like, I believe in Jesus Christ and he saved me from my heart condition, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to poo-poo on him too much. Because when he talks about stories, like, well, I don't know, because like I wasn't there. I don't, I'm going to be. But I have been honest.
Experiences.
But at the same time, I go, you're contributing it to God. I go, I don't know if that is true. I know that's your perception of what happened, but I'm the type of person that's going to ask more questions. Like, could it be this? Could it be that? But I said, but that's just me. And if we start telling other people, if we start discounting their experiences, because for him, his experience was that God healed him. He's not, but the fact that I'm kind to him and I'm having conversations with him and we can kind of, I'll go, well, I go, what about this? What about that? Because I'm not attacking him, he feels comfortable talking to me because I'm not calling him stupid. I'm not telling him that he's a bad person for being a believer. Like, he's a generally, like, I can tell he's a generally kind, like, giving human being. So I do, but when we're talking about philosophy, I'm going to be like, hey man, I don't think that happened, but also, like, I don't think a God healed you, but also at the same time, I have no way to prove or disprove that. So, because I'm just a person talking on the internet, but I also know that the human body will heal itself.
Oh, yeah, it does all sorts of things. Because you never want to argue with people about their lived experience.
Yeah.
Because that's a good way to make a real enemy for life.
Yeah.
You're not seeing them, you're discounting their experience and saying you're just too stupid to understand what the real world's like.
Like your experience was not your experience. It's like.
Yeah, because Christians do that all the time to people like us. They discount our lived experience, and I was sure real hard not to discount.
We were led astray. We weren't really Christians.
That's right. I wasn't
whatever belief we had.
I never really loved Jesus like they did.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't spend. You didn't go to school to and learn Christian history, and you didn't become a preacher, and you didn't live your life for a good portion of your life believing in the risen Christ and believing that he was the way to redemption. No.
No, I didn't believe any of that. I was just in it for the grift.
Right. I believed in reincarnation for a while. But I didn't really believe it. Like what? Like how do you know my inner world?
Yeah. And I can remember being guilty of that too, thinking I knew what people were thinking because I had based that knowledge on things I had read in the Bible and things I had heard other commentators say about being able to, this is the real, like my favorite one was the one I find most odious, I guess is a better way to put it, is the one about, well, you don't want to believe in God because you just want to sin. That's all you're interested in. You just want to commit sin, do evil things.
I'm always like, what's sin? What's sin? I'm like, sex?
Well, yeah, sex. Drug, killing people.
I'm like, do you drink? Do you drink coffee?
Yeah.
Coffee's a drug.
Coffee's a drug, and it's a big Mormon no-no.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's really funny. I think like there is a kind of a little bit of a joke that like, Joseph Smith's wife was so sick and tired of picking up like cigarette butts and coffee shit like after a meeting that he just was like, I'm not gonna do that. And I'm like, I can see that being possible.
But yeah, you got, even like you said, even if you don't believe it, a lot of times it depends on how they deploy their lived experience too. Now, if they're deploying it as a weapon against you, then you kind of have to do something about that.
Yeah, that's the difference. Like if I'm talking about,
that's not what you're talking about at all.
No, I'm talking about like just meeting people where they're at. But when
Yeah.
you start turning because I've had conversations with people too, that they say like, you know, because I'm an atheist, they'll say I'm not happy. I have a demon in me. That was another one that I've been told. I'm like, I have a demon. I'm like, what's my demon? And they're like, well, you're not happy. I'm like, how do you know I'm not happy? I'm a perfectly happy person. You know nothing about my life, but okay, explain. And then they proceed to tell you who you are. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you've talked to me for 5 minutes on the internet.
And you
How
know
the
who I
fuck
am.
do you know who I am? How do you know? Like I can discern from your judgment that I'm going to discern that you're an asshole. I made that decision, but other than that, I know nothing about your life.
And you know nothing about my life.
All right.
But yeah, that's something that particularly ministers do, where they
my cat's demanding me. I'll keep talking. I gotta let my cat out.
Oh, okay. But that's something that particularly ministers do and teach others to do, which is to basically, here's this script in your mind. It's like, okay, this person doesn't want to be a believer. Okay. And then you just basically assign a reason for it. You tell them who they are. And sometimes it actually kind of resonates with that other person, because maybe that's what they are doing, but it's not because you knew anything. It's just because you got lucky. Just like when people who do cold reading fortunes,
right?
Fortune tellers, they get it right, even though that's not really, they don't really know anything.
Yeah. It's and I think that like those type of it says more about the person than it does about the person that's actually doing the questioning. Because like if somebody's questioning a belief or perspective that they have, like that, unless it's like a questioning, like, am I like, are people of color really taking away my jobs? And I think that they are. Like, okay, like, no, that's not that, we have to have a conversation about that. That's not great.
Yeah.
But if you're going, is there a God? Like, at the end of the day, like, especially about certain beliefs, it's like, well, if it's true, it will pan out to be true. Like, facts will always reveal themselves to be true. So if you have to talk someone out of them going, I don't think I buy this, and then you're not encouraging them to follow the path, and you're saying like, well, if you start doubting, then that's the devil. It's just like, no, this person's living in reality, and reality is butting up against a religious belief. And that if it is true, then the truth will out. It always does.
It does, yeah. Yeah. If your beliefs are not congruent with the nature of reality, then they're not, they're false. That's just a fancy way of saying what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where I find, because I'm always like, I think everybody like, I've always encouraged my kids to question everything, question authority, question an idea that they have, see if it like lines up to reality, and also major thing, like, just be kind. Like, I'm always like, you can question things all you want, but like at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter what you believe, is how we treat one another. And if you're treating one another like a butthead, then like, regardless of your belief or lack thereof, it's like, that's the thing I'm going to judge you on. Not your belief, is how you treat other people. That's always the thing. And and regardless if you're atheist or not, because I know atheists that are racist, transphobic, homophobic, white nationalists, buttheads. Yeah. And I know,
unfortunately.
And I know believers that are kind, giving, wonderful human beings. So again, this is not like we question things because we're just over here going like, you know what? Usually certain religion beliefs lead to bad things, and we're pushing against that. We're pushing against the bad ideas because your beliefs form you.
Well, and the thing about Christianity is, like you're saying, there are, and I know people that are Christians that are just genuinely kind people. But the problem with most Christianity is the praxis, the actual practice of Christianity is overshadowed by the doctrines and the
Right.
dogma and the things you're supposed to believe. And that's where you start getting assholes, really,
Right.
because they can say, I'm a good Christian because I believe this, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this.
But
They're not being kind, they're not helping the poor, they're not doing all the other things Jesus
they
really
become
emphasized.
capitalists. They say things like, well, we're all gonna die anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah,
God,
and you're over here going
that
like,
just blew my mind.
I was like, I'm like, girl.
She said the
Even if
quiet
that's
part out
true,
loud.
even if Jesus is coming back, can I just? But I'm like, I don't feel like I should have to suffer while I'm here.
Yeah. No one should have to suffer, in my opinion.
No one should have to suffer. So I'm like, but you live a very comfortable life because you won capitalism. Good for you, honey. You won capitalism.
or
Good for
your
you.
husband won capitalism for you, or your
Somebody
grandparents.
oh my God, she's a woman. She got help. Sorry, not sorry. I'm not sorry. I know how it works. Trust me. Oh my God, I hate being overly educated sometimes on like how systems work. It just like one of those things that I'm just like, wow, there's so many rabbit holes we could go down of how capitalism screws so many different types of people, and also for a woman like her, you are not one of us. Sorry, I don't believe in the line with your oppressors. They're not going to save you. I'm so sorry for you. Sorry. I got opinions. I got opinions. Oh my God. It is. We've been at this for almost 2.5 hours, so I do have to wrap this up.
Okay, cool.
This is a really great conversation.
I really had a good time. I enjoyed visiting.
I don't know. We were going into the deconversion story. We went on so many different. It is the ADHD way. So
that's okay.
So so tell the people where they can find you and what you have coming up and all the things. Oh, by the way, how is the film coming along, the documentary film?
Last time I checked, it's coming along pretty good. We went to, it was supposed to be autism again. It was supposed to wrap up, originally at the camp, but we ended up. You remember when we were writing that song with Shelley Sagal?
Yeah.
Well, we ended up taking that and going to Los Angeles, and we made a music video.
Oh, that's great! I love
December.
that. That's so great. And Shelley's amazing, so that's so cool. Oh my God!
And I ended up getting COVID-19.
Well, okay, I've had it too, so I
managed to miss it for until, and I came home and gave it to my wife, and we were both, Elisa and I were just like,
it is. I've been vaccinated. I got it back at the beginning of 2023, January 2023, because that's when I started my new job, and I felt like I was like, I feel like I got hit by a truck. Like it just knocked me out, and my oldest might not have it right now. They're quarantined in their room because I don't want it again. It was not a good time. And I was like, I cannot imagine having, but like when it first came out, my husband got it, and there's no way that particular variant did not make us sick, but apparently this new mutation that we got like a couple of years to do made me sick. But still, I could not imagine if I hadn't been vaccinated, because that alone, I felt like I had just a very bad flu. But that's with vaccinations. And I'm also reminded that I'm like, I just got lucky. So.
Well, yeah, we had all the vaccinations up to, we weren't able to get the one for the end of 2024 because they stopped, the government stopped paying for them. We don't have any insurance, and so we ended up, we had not gotten that one, and that was the one I caught. But that's the sickest I've ever been as an adult, with the exception of the time I had norovirus.
Norovirus is I've had
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It is a special type of hell.
Yeah.
4
Yeah.
days of like
I
I remember I was laying on the couch and I'm like, if I roll over and I'll vomit, but I'm so uncomfortable just laying here. I have to move, but as soon as I turn, I'm going to have to throw up.
Mhm.
It is
Yeah.
a special, like my husband both had it, and because my oldest got it, and I had to wash their clothes, and because they had gotten sick in their clothes, which was not their fault, and I had to clean. I'm like, I'm gonna get this thing. 24 hours later, I started feeling it, and then my husband got it, and I had nausea and vomiting, and I had the runs once. His was the opposite. He had the runs and he threw up once, and I was like, "Yay for 4 days! 4 days." It is a special hell, and I do not want that on anybody.
Yeah, not even Donald Trump. I don't think he'd survive that. But so anyhow, back to the movie. We did that. We did the in studio, filmed it, recorded it, gig, and then we it's supposed to come out sometime, probably in the fall.
Cool. All right, I'm excited.
But the movie's called, for those who may not know, it's called Heathens. And it's put out by Pale Blue Dot Films.
Yep, I will put a link in the doobly-doo.
It was directed by David Cohen and Sean Harden.
They're who are also wonderful human beings.
Yes, they are. I appreciate both of them a whole lot.
They were so nice at the excursion. They're like just really, really great people.
But that's the only thing I've got going on. I'm probably going to the No Kings March on Saturday here, because originally we weren't going to have one because our Democratic Party was already hooked up with the Juneteenth celebration, but somebody else set up one, so I'm going to go to that. And that's about all I got going on. I don't have any cool website, or I don't have any cool videos or anything like that.
That's fine.
I'm just on Facebook.
Go bug ATM. Though I do really appreciate you being here. Though, I don't really care. Like I just thought your story was so fascinating when I met you at excursion, and I was like, I gotta talk to this dude more, because like these are the type of stories that matter. Like stories about people getting out of religion, finding themselves, becoming like more empathetic and more of a, well-rounded, rational free thinker is the thing that, I care about. So thank you so much for being here. I really
thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was great. It's one of those things. It was wonderful because we were all over the place, and that's the whole design of my show. So
that's cool. I kind of, like I said, it's a conversation, and conversations, they're trails that they go off on.
Yep. Exactly. So, so thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. So, this Saturday, Dr. Ben's going to be here. Me and Dr. Ben are going to talk about how to deal with conflict within the secular atheist community, because there's drama recently. So we're going to have a conversation about that.
Is this the drama about the transphobic stuff? Or is this a different
kind
drama
of related?
that I don't know?
And also there was some other conflict that was going on. It's a thing. Just turn in Saturday. You'll find out.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into everything. There's always cool. Transphobic people everywhere. This is new, stupid drama that's going on. That it's dumb. Is it dumb? Yes. But we're going to have a conversation about it, because we're all part of this community. We have to learn how to handle conflict like adults. So that's going to be 7 p.m. this Saturday. I have to make a thumbnail. And then Ms. Non Sequitur, who shows up here a lot and is a wonderful person in the atheist community, will be here on Monday. What are we going to talk about? I don't know. Coleman Watts, who is also a content creator. Am I blanking on his channel? Yes, but he was on Seth Andrews' channel, and he used to be part of the Red Pill community. And then he started his own pocket own channel, and he's very, very funny. So he'll be here next for Juneteenth. And then on the 22nd of the month, I'm going to have a Pride panel because it's Pride Month. So, yay. So if you are like, subscribe, do the things. I'm usually here every Thursday, but also I've been doing other content during the weekend. So I tell people when you know I do it, like the sharing and all the things. So thank you so much. I wish everybody a wonderful week. Happy Pride again. I will be here on Saturday with Dr. Ben, and until then, everybody be kind. Give someone a compliment, be skeptical, and I will see everybody here on Saturday. Good night, everybody. Bye. Thank you, AT, again. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you
bye,
so
people.
much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Mwah. All right. Bye.